your sons. And I want to use that as a segue into introducing our next speaker, who's someone that I've gotten to know over the last few years. When I think about Malvern alumni, when I think about the young men whom we form and send out into the world, this person is at the very top of the list of people who I am really proud of. It makes me proud to be associated with Malvern. I'm not an alumnus. Knowing Ryan Murphy makes me wish that I had gone to Malvern. This is a young man who explored many different areas in the athletics, in the arts, in academics when he was here at Malvern. He went on to the Rhode Island School of Design, which is a leading edge school, not only in design, but really in public engagement. And one of the things that Ryan did during his time at RISD was speak to Congress about STEM and STEAM initiatives in education. How many students when they're in college can say that they actually spoke before Congress and helped craft a proposal about what STEM and STEAM learning should look like? And that's an extraordinary thing. And now he is a designer at SYPartners. And he's going to talk to you a little bit about his own experience as a Malvern student, as an alumnus, and I think kind of talk a little bit about our mission. So I'm happy to introduce Ryan Murphy from the class of 2011.
So Father Flynn just told me not to screw up, so I think I will give it my best go. And I know a lot of the faculty here, and I hope that coming back this evening can kind of be twofold. One, for the parents who are here to be able to see what it looks like when someone leaves Malvern, goes to college and beyond. I graduated 5 years ago. And I think for the faculty, and maybe almost more importantly, be able to see kind of all of the fruits of your labor. Anyone that I knew here, everything that I will share tonight is so much a reflection of what you gave me while I was here. So it's a kind of initial thank you, and hopefully this is a reflection of kind of why you get up out of bed every morning and come here. And so to start, I'll go through basically 3 chapters. One, brief snapshot of what my time at Malvern was like. A little bit more extended on some of the experiences I had at college at RISD. And then briefly about a project that I'm working on now professionally, which is actually around education. So I love this quote by John Locke, that education begins the gentleman. And definitely for Malvern, it is, the gentleman is the heart of kind of what we do. I started here in 2004 as a 6th grader. I'm a lifer, so this is almost embarrassing to show. If you remember Livestrong bracelets, I realize, it's like dating myself, almost, these things. And worked on a variety of stuff at Malvern, different poems. This was a poem from Mr. Wasson about wanting to go to the University of Miami, which my younger brother ended up doing. And I was always interested in the arts at Malvern. Right when I came here, when I was in 8th grade, we were building the Duffy Center, and so the Duffy Center had a huge impact on my time here. And I also ran varsity cross country and did, probably 8 to 10 different sports while I was here, so I don't want to overshadow that too. As you can see by my physical build, I'm not going to be a professional athlete, so that quickly kind of went away in favor of some more artistic talent. This is one of the first things I made here, which Miss Plows is in the back kind of wincing at how awful this looks. But slowly things got better and better, and thank you to the faculty here. I came out with a portfolio that was pretty strong and was able to get me into a top design school. And just a few more images from my time here. These are all kind of low res, but we won the Interact Basketball Championship our senior year. Brian Swanick, who's an alumni from my same year, is in this photo kind of going crazy and led a lot of this initiative. And since it is, there are a lot of parents here, these are the parents I had kind of going away for graduation. And I told Father Flynn I would embarrass him with one photo, although this is hardly embarrassing since Father Flynn always looks good in pictures, I think. So this is our group of MECA leaders. I was a MECA leader while I was here. And I think it's fascinating to see now where everyone has gone. One of the MECA leaders is going to be drafted this year in the NFL. hopefully in the first round, probably more like the second or third round. One of them is doing Augustinian teaching in the West Coast. Someone's doing sports, business stuff in New York. Another friend is doing banking. Brian's here, could talk about sort of his life right now. I mean, it's fascinating to see the different directions that people can go. But so for the direction that I kind of went was to this obscure art school called RISD, which I remember I mean, you just heard the list of people and where they're going for colleges. I'm just like, holy crap, that's amazing. And when we had our kind of reviews of everyone's going off, you know, you're going to Brown or Penn or Notre Dame or Villanova, and it's like, I'm going to the Rhode Island School of Design. It's like, where the hell is that? Like, what are you talking about? And the reason you might know RISD is probably through two pop culture references. One, Seth MacFarlane, the career of Family Guy, is a big RISD grad, and the founders of Airbnb are also RISD grads, and now actually pretty good friends of mine. So that's sort of within the world how you might know RISD. And I think what's probably most interesting about my time at RISD in comparison to Malvern is how different of schools they were. When I was here, I think I was looking for something that was very much like Malvern in the world, and kind of stumbled upon something completely different in a way that was very, very sort of powerful in the way that I would actually end up developing. I think here I got such a sense of the Augustinian mission and a real breadth of expertise, and that when at RISD I was exposed to a much more maker mode kind of education. All of my classes were studio based. They were something like 6 hours at a time. We were building things, trying things out. It's very much kind of this historically designed mentality that now within business and education has also gotten to get a lot of a foothold in terms of how we teach and learn. So it's everything from being in a lab, the nature lab of all of these crazy animals, to big textile looms. And the way that I kind of sum up what RISD does, more than just being, you know, can you design like a toaster or a refrigerator, is that it's less of like design a running shoe, and it would be more of design a way to get from point A to point B. Which, when you think about the question this way, you could do a jetpack or a pool or an alligator with wings. I mean, there's so many different ways you can think about a problem. And RISD, in a real way, gave me this perspective on the problems that I was sort of going through. And I think that kind of with that Malvern backing is really where I was able to take off. So I studied industrial design, which is a program that's very sort of physical, but what I've drawn out of that is a lot more of the strategic and sort of systems level design stuff, which I will talk about in a little bit. So the sort of portfolio spread that I had in high school eventually kind of got updated and modernized and started to look a lot better. While I was in college, I was on the board of the Brown RISD Catholic community, so a quick plug for Mom that, you know, kept my faith alive in college, and for Father Flynn. And so this is something I was involved in all the way through college, and was very much sort of a real sort of driver of the work that I was able to do. And so, as Christian mentioned, a few of the other projects I did while at college, I think pushed sort of where I was trying to go beyond just the classroom or the studio in a way that I think now has really given me a lot of expertise. The first was a entrepreneurship group that I started, which, similar to what's happening at Malvern now, it's actually interesting to see a similar kind of structure. We were sort of working with teams of designers and students from Brown and RISD to basically build startups. We secured a variety of funding. We were able to put together different teams of students. We had a lot of different speaking engagements. This is Paul English, the co-founder of kayak.com. We had the founder of Reddit in, a bunch of different people to, similar to what Christian was just sharing, speak about their expertise in a way that I think gave students a sort of an aspiration for where they could go. Another big project I was involved in was the whole STEM to STEAM movement. There's a huge sort of push right now within science, technology, engineering, and mathematics from a federally funded perspective to put more money into these kind of core expertise areas, thinking, or because historically they've driven sort of economic growth and job creation in the future. And one of the things that at RISD we were really pushing for, and that I was pushing for, was to say that with this sort of artist and design mentality, coupled with these other disciplines, is really when you start to unlock things and make things happen. And when I had that Steve Jobs quote up earlier about creativity is just connecting things, this is 100% what that's about. And so I think when you see that we have 130 students in global exchange programs and things like that, for me what that says is you're able to get such a diverse sort of level of experiences to pull from when you're creating things. And I think that's so important. And that, for me, while I was at Malvern and beyond, has been extremely important. So we ran I think 6 or 7 different congressional briefings on the Hill. This is the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, and we were, the Senate Majority Leader, and we sort of pitched to her this whole project around STEM to STEAM. It was about a 6-year-long project that I came in during the middle of, and actually this November finally passed in Congress, and is now, STEAM is sort of a federally funded and legislated initiative, which is awesome. And it's amazing the sort of effort it takes to get through some of these things in a way that you actually kind of see them through to the end. And so I spoke as well to the American Association for the Advancement of Science, AAAS, on a big sort of 40th year anniversary they had on how art and science policy are kind of coupled together. So I'm sort of breezing through these things intentionally, and I can touch on anything more specifically afterwards, but I hope it gives a breadth of kind of some of the things that I've done. Work-wise, I had very different experiences in the summers. I traveled to India and did a variety of design sort of consulting work with NGOs over in India. I worked for IBM down in Austin, Texas for a summer, and on a paper with Microsoft, and then helped on a startup with the MIT Media Lab around sort of economic development in different parts of Africa. And then through a fellowship I got at RISD, I've always been interested in this kind of global perspective on how design could play a role. Did a project with the World Economic Forum around rethinking data and how we look at data in the world. And part of sort of this project and working there for 3 months was this animation that I ended up producing that was displayed in Davos in 2013, which was pretty awesome to be a designer in a very non-design setting, but driving a lot of thinking that people kind of reconsidered how they looked at data and what they could do. And so the first thing I showed was, okay, here's the visual talent that you think that you can get, and then out of that they saw the real kind of power of what someone from a creative background could do from the more strategic perspective. And so I ended up co-authoring 2 papers with the World Economic Forum on personal data, and sort of really shifted a lot of the dialogue to being more about people and how people actually use data, which seems intuitive, but when you have massive amounts of credit card data or massive amounts of telecom data, you're not really thinking about one person with a cell phone. You're thinking about, you know, data aggregation and things like that. So what we were trying to do is kind of shift the discussion to a more sort of human, a more personal approach. And through this work, I was I don't think elected is the right word, but selected for this group called 89 Plus, which honors artists and designers born after 1989 who are doing, I guess, interesting global design-related things, which was quite an honor and quite unexpected, because most of my work is not so fine art related, but is more sort of design at systemic issue related. But I had the opportunity to speak in Mexico City at their annual design week, Zona Maco, at a new building that they had just opened. And then right now I have some work up at a gallery in Zurich, which is going to be moving this fall to Shanghai. So if anyone's going to be in Shanghai in the fall, I'll give you the name of the gallery where it's going to. And the piece was kind of a follow-up on the World Economic Forum work to think about how intuition and creativity plays out in a more data-driven world. And so one of the things that sort of precluded this was a big session that we did between the World Economic Forum, the World Bank, RISD, and a few other big sort of commercial data holder organizations to think about creative ways of looking at data that aren't just from an analytics perspective. And then finally, in terms of the sort of RISD piece, and this is something my mom is going to wince at a little bit, because there's a little bit of illegality in this project. I did a thesis project on the New York City subway system and the feeling of disorientation when you get out of the subway. So if you've ever been to basically any subway system in the world, but especially in New York, when you come out of the subway, you kind of end up looking around like, I think I know where I'm going, or you see the World Trade Center or the Empire State Building and you start going one way, and then half a block later you turned around and are back the other way. And so what I did was prototype a variety of different solutions to essentially solve this problem. Different things on the turnstiles, stuff on the ceilings, kind of all over the place, and ended up with these stairwell signs that I tested out in the 86th and Lexington station, and then basically produced at a very high quality on my own, almost mirror lookalikes to the real signs, and then installed them in the city in New York. And then this ended up getting a lot of press, and this is from Fast Company. This is Thrillist, helpful subway signs. Mashable called it genius, which I don't really know if it's genius, but it was still kind of a cool thing to be involved in. And I remember as I was putting this up, because actually this is technically vandalism, and it is illegal. So Malvern Prep, if you're supporting me as someone who's, you know, fighting for good in all sorts of different ways. It was a cool project to be able to see, because at the same time I was talking with people at the MTA and the Department of Transportation, to see how slow things happen from just logistical perspective, from funding perspective, within some of these bureaucratic institutions, and trying to basically do the same thing but through the actual organizations and some of their lead people, while at the same time on like the bottom level thinking about how people actually navigate in the city and different ways of pinpointing sort of different solutions to make that happen. And I think that has always been my interest, is flying between those two levels of how do people think about the world and how do big decisions happen, and then at the same time, why do we, you know, show up for work every day? What makes us want to go to a gallery on the weekend or get home for dinner with our family? It's those kind of very human, very root level things that I think aren't often reflected in the way big decisions are made. And so I started working last year in New York at this company called SYPartners, which is a small design and strategy firm in Chelsea. So that's my office right there. So I came back down from New York to speak this evening, and then I'll be on 7 a.m. Amtrak tomorrow morning back to work. And our whole office is this kind of open office plan, a huge sort of overlap between business strategy, so people usually coming out of MBA programs, but also out of a variety of different fields, and then design, from graphic design, industrial design, all sorts of different, more creative fields. So this is kind of the feeling of what our office is. It's all sort of open plan, lots of whiteboards, you know, post-it notes, collaboration, all that kind of stuff. And the project I've been involved with for most of the year is this thing called the XQ Super School Project. And this was launched by Laurene Powell Jobs, Steve Jobs' widow, this past September, in an effort to rethink the American high school. So it's especially relevant, I think, in terms of what Malvern is doing right now, but it also highlights a lot of, I think, where Malvern needs to go. So there's a kind of quick video that they put out on this, which I'll share with you.
Let's rethink high school so that our graduates are prepared to face this new global economy in which we live.
At the end of the day, we need high school to be creating collaborators, problem solvers, and creators, and we have to make some big changes in high school to make that happen.
XQ is one of the greatest acts of love that I've seen in quite a while.
This is a great opportunity to literally reinvent how a high school is built, how it operates, and how our students learn.
And if it's a competition, I venture to say right now that New Orleans is going to win.
Encourage your school or community to join XQ, the Super School Challenge. Come on, America! Together, we can do this!
So you know if Snoop Dogg's involved, that it must be legit, right? So I think it's been a fascinating project to be on because it is touching on the American high school system in so many different parts of the country. And as part of this project, I got to go to New Orleans, to Jackson, Mississippi, to San Francisco, Chicago, Boston, DC, all these different places to see how mayors, how city leaders, how people in the private sector are looking at the future of education. And the disparities from a public school perspective in zip codes that could be right next to each other is astounding. And I think that if you are in public schools, you end up kind of based on where you live, getting a completely different level of education. And I think that within the private school system, it almost puts an extra level of oomph behind the need to really start pushing where education is going. One of the blessings of being on this project has been an ability to work with a lot of top educators in different areas on sort of what's the future, or what's the latest thinking on like brain science and how students learn. When do students form their identity and when can those things change? All the way to school financing and things like that. And so there's a real sort of consensus within the education industry that one, it sucks and it's really hard and it's like going to take a while, but two, it is so necessary, and that it's even harder within the public school system. So I think that Malvern really has a unique opportunity to push it and be sort of a model for what it means to be Augustinian, what it means to be sort of a new generation of leaders and learners. And the last thing I'll share sort of related to this project, which is kind of a personal promo. One of the things we got to work on and that I designed was this XQ design kit. And so for all the participants who joined this XQ project, we sent out these kits. They're pretty heavy. They have a bunch of different books on how to interview youth in your community, posters to kind of get you inspired. And regardless of your partisan politics, it was really cool that Barack Obama actually went through this and sort of played around with it. So this is Laureen Powell-Jobs on the right. And then you know the guy on the left. So it was cool to work on something from totally phase one, what do we even want to do, and then have it come all the way through to now being implemented. And we printed maybe 5,000 of these that are all over the country, sort of helping people design a school. And so in terms of what's next now for me, and I think hopefully for the faculty, it's inspiring to see kind of where this journey has led me, where the next kind of step leads. SYPartners is part of this creative collective called Q, which is part of this Japanese holding company. And IDEO actually just got bought by Q as well, which is a very famous design firm. And there's essentially 7 key directives that we've identified as the future of what the things we want to work on. So if I had to say, what am I going to be working on in the next 20 years, it's more or less these 7 things were identified. Serving the needs of the global poor, designing new approaches to health, including aging and end of life, designing healthy and profitable food systems that can serve the needs of all, designing citizen-centered government services, designing the future of urban communities, anticipating the opportunities and challenges of new technologies, and finally, the future of work and the corporation itself. So I think that if you think about what Malvern's sort of mission is and how relevant it is for what top companies are trying to solve right now, it is spot on and has to be, I think, at the root of who we are like as students and as people. And so I'll end with this quote, which is one of my favorites from C.S. Lewis, about believing in Christianity as he believes in the sun, not only because I see it, but because by it I see everything else. And I think what Malvern, what the faculty, what the community here taught me was that if I have sort of faith at the center, then everything else will be driven from that. And if it's sort of a lens with which I see the world, then all these other projects, all these other creative pursuits will kind of flow naturally from it and will sort of be fruitful. So, thank you.